The battle over AI and journalism is intensifying. Following the Andrew Olle Lecture, the Reuters editor-in-chief urged publishers to stand firm as Anthropic denies negotiating with the ABC over access to its content. Coming up, the growing battle between AI and journalism, plus why Australia's sports betting ads are facing renewed scrutiny over responsible gambling. For more, let's head to Sydney. We're joined by Darren Woolley from Trinity P3. Great to see you. Let's start off talking about what the Reuters editor-in-chief actually is accusing the AI companies of doing during the Andrew Olle Lecture.
Yeah, look, it's an excellent night, the Andrew Olle Media Lecture, Ahron, and one that anyone that has any interest in this issue should have attended or watch online. What she was saying was we have to stick together as an industry. You know, we have to have very firm guidelines and guardrails in having these discussions, because these tech companies are incredibly large and they're incredibly influential. We're already seeing the pressure they're putting on government to compromise what's already in place as far as copyright goes.
As someone with an interest in the media and also a publisher myself, I'm a little bit confused as to where things stand in the big media industries, because we know that Nine has done a deal with Microsoft over use of its content for AI. We know that the ABC has chosen Anthropic and Claude for its internal systems when it comes to AI. But talk to us about where the industry is currently at and what it's trying to do.
And look, I think we saw that on Tuesday night, where these leaders of media companies, major media companies, were trying to balance the right of distributing their content out there free, but also needing to have a commercial arrangement that pays them for producing this content in the first place. And I know Hugh Marks at the ABC and Jane Palfreyman particularly are torn between their role as a provider, a public provider of news, and the need to actually get paid for doing that. It was definitely a conundrum, but I think universally they agreed that there should be some sort of compensation, and they were looking towards the government and the announcement of the AI office or Office of AI to actually define that.
It's interesting because we saw the battle last time around, and it was really against Google, getting Google to pay the tech companies for news, because essentially if you Googled a topic, Google would put up the details of an article that sometimes was behind a paywall. So is this similar now to their battle against Google for news? It's just moved to the next sphere, which is AI?
Oh, absolutely. This is just another round of, first it was the social media platforms, it was Google search, and now it's AI, because they all acknowledge that these companies need this source of content so that they can feed their AI engines. What they're asking for is there is a cost associated with that. There's also a reputation that comes with it, that news journalism is a trusted source of information, and so there should be some sort of compensation there. It was interesting, Matt Stanton at Nine, the deal that they did with Microsoft for Copilot included citations so that the sources would be also included in any time it was used. I think that's quite a smart move.
We've seen News Corp go head-to-head with an AI company called Perplexity, and Perplexity essentially puts an article together on its news page with sources from a whole bunch of different places. It can have 14, 15 different news sources, and News Corp said that's taking our content and reusing it, and that seems to be ongoing here. My concern is that Nine is doing deals, financial deals, with companies like Microsoft, but at the same time letting go of 30 staff. And I am concerned that despite all of the different bargaining deals that we have seen with, as you mentioned, the social media companies and the Googles and the Metas of the world, they're still shedding jobs. So is this money going to actually paying for journalism or for shareholders of media companies?
Look, it's a really good point, Ahron, and in fact on the night it was put to Matt Stanton from Nine about the layoff of 30 more journalists from their news divisions, and he said it wasn't AI directly, but Alessandra Galani said that in fact AI has an important role in the Reuters newsroom, that it actually does help journalists become more productive, but also used the right way, can be incredibly useful in getting all of the facts collected together. They don't use it to actually write stories, but they certainly use it for research. And I think, this is what we will see, is that it's going to change the way newsrooms work, in that the way journalists embrace AI in a responsible way, rather than just as a replacement for the work that they already do.
All right, let's move on. Australia's sports betting ads are blending creativity with a sobering irony as they transition from humour to stark warnings about responsible gambling. Let's talk about this one. It's a really interesting one. Do you see, I guess, gambling as the new societal villain here that used to be alcohol and tobacco?
Well, look, I don't think it's just me. I think we're actually seeing this trend that there's a playbook that's been used. It was refined for tobacco. It's now being applied to all sorts of things, as you say, alcohol, gambling, fast foods, all sorts of things. The first play is to then start to limit the advertising opportunities, and then put with restrictions, but then ultimately leading to a ban. And I think we're seeing that here with gambling. But I think the industry itself is also thumbing their nose, because there is legislation about putting warnings at the end of it. And I wrote an opinion piece about this that said that they're doing it in a way that creates the least amount of impact possible. In fact, it's almost done tongue-in-cheek. And I think the industry has to be careful. If we provoke these people that are wanting to ban us, it'll just accelerate the ban.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one, obviously, because gambling is one of those things that some people just love to do it, and some go way too far here as well. But the last frontier of television seems to be sports, and live sport in particular. We've seen essentially the Murdochs getting rid of their entire empire, but keeping sport and news. Disney as well with ESPN. It's a really big spending, high spending world. Stan Sport reliant on it, DAZN reliant on it as well. And one of the biggest spenders are the sports betting companies as well. And the flow on of that money goes towards these big clubs and paying players who want to be paid more to put their bodies on the line here as well. So how do you get the tone right?
Look, I think, first of all, what you've just expressed there, Ahron, is exactly why the Labor government has not embraced all of the gambling recommendations. What they've done here is actually put forward what they're calling an interim step to allow the financing to continue. And I think that's one of the issues here, is that, yes, we have seen tobacco was banned from sporting events, alcohol had bans put on being advertised in sporting events and sponsorships. But it's done over a period of time so that new sponsors and new opportunities come forward. And I think that's why the Labor government's doing this. What I'm seeing on the other side is that the groups that are anti-gambling are saying, is the social cost too high to actually go this softly approach? This has been a topic that has been in the marketplace, been in society for more than a decade, and we're finally getting to a solution. But people are not seeing the solution being fast enough. And I think, you're right, there is a commercial and economic requirement here, but also there's a social requirement. And I think the government is trying to get that balance there. I'm not sure they have as yet, but we'll see.
There's a bottled water company that was advertising at the cinema that I went to last night that said, when you don't have access to a water bottle that is a keeper, use us. Do you think that we should ban water bottles?
There's lots of things that we probably should ban, but I think there's also a right that if we can't just talk about banning advertising while we allow the products to still be sold. I think
that's the thing. Point. I mean, we might not have alcohol ads playing during the football, but there are plenty of people having a beer or whatever it might be while watching the football. Right. Same with smoking as well. And you can't I think the idea of, if we don't have the ads, we get rid of the problem completely. That's the big challenge, right?
Well, what we do by limiting advertising or banning it is reducing the ways of getting new consumers to come into it, and that's really what it's about. I think the other thing is that perhaps, and the industry wouldn't like this, but if the problem's a social one, then it needs to be about education, and perhaps taxes are a way of funding that. But,
Yeah.
and that's another direction that people will resist. So how do we solve these social problems? I don't think banning advertising alone is enough, but I think we need to look at a holistic approach, and the focus on advertising is because it's so visible.
All right, Darren Woolley, appreciate your insights always from Trinity P3. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Ahron.